Tesla stock raised to a $700 price target in a soft price increase by Oppenheimer. We also take a look at some data that's coming out of China in terms of what's going on in sales of the Chinese-made Model 3. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Wanted to first thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. Also note that if you do say hello, we're happy to acknowledge you at the end of the show around 20 minutes. I wanted to run through there's a song by a rap group, and it's called Insane in the Membrane. And the chorus is insane in the membrane, insane in the brain. So I bring this up today because it's amazing. In December, we did a show that pointed out that once Tesla's stock price started moving, you'd actually see an acceleration in the stock price very quickly. So the decisions you would make about buying the stock, owning it, keeping it or not, were going to be hard pressed because the pace of change of the stock price would be dramatic. So our target was about $500 based on the real data we could touch versus anticipated numbers that are driving analysts increasing the numbers currently. So I define this show as insane in the membrane because based on the fact that in theory this company was worth $450 a share 3 days ago and now it's at $550, that's pretty insane. A 20% increase in maybe 48 hours or 2 trading days is pretty amazing. And then the run over the last 2 or 3 weeks has been further amazing. So one of the things about our show is we like to try to push out some data. That way our viewers can sort of leverage that data to sort of understand better what's going on out there. So let me run through some numbers for you that we've come up with from one of our viewers in China. Right now, China Tesla is experiencing about 1,000 orders a day for the made in China Model 3. The stores are currently extremely jammed to the point where there are now queues outside the store for folks to get in after the folks that are already inside and ordering have cleared the space. Another data point we're getting is that you're seeing as many as 300 orders a day from one store. So the 1,000 a day number ordering doesn't sound out of line. What's strange, though, is based on the data I just gave you, there's this thing where if you're getting 1,000 orders a day and you're making 280 cars a day, you should be able to sort of anticipate how many vehicles or how many days out you are from vehicles coming in. Another data point that was shared by someone who went in the store was that the employees from Tesla are saying it was kind of 8 weeks before you could get your vehicle after you order it, but that time has now jumped to 9 weeks. So there's a lot, there's some conflicting points there. For example, if you're getting 1,000 orders a day, how many days you've been getting that? Is that higher or lower than the previous day? There's a whole bunch of questions that are unanswered about that data, but we kind of wanted to throw it out there because I think that some of that data is influencing the decision to increase the stock price target for Tesla, and we wanted to sort of maybe roll it out to you so you know some of the data we're hearing or seeing, and then as it starts to influence the stock, you can sort of go backwards and say, some of the data that was coming in makes more sense now. So that's kind of the agenda we have. So one other point that came up that wasn't discussed here is that Tesla started taking pre-orders back in June, July, and for 3 days the servers were overwhelmed by demand of people trying to configure their cars in order. So the other question that we're asking is that in theory right now, Tesla's putting out about 3,000 vehicles a week, theoretically. The number could be 1,000, it could be 3,000, it's someplace between there. And we were targeting something in the range of between 50 and 100,000 vehicles that were already ordered. And so in theory, if Tesla China is producing, call it 5,000 vehicles a month now, and that's going to be increasing on a regular basis. In theory, right now, we should be filling orders for people who ordered already, not necessarily even thinking about the new orders. So I guess this suggests then that the pre-orders weren't as huge as we thought based on how things are rolling out right now and how long it takes to both order, excuse me, and then get your vehicle. So we don't have the answer to this, but it's a good question to ask in terms of figuring out what's happening. But nonetheless, it is a good thing that Tesla has, I guess, a 9-week backlog right now for vehicles in China. And based on the number of orders coming in, they're going to be hard pressed to get through those orders over the next, let's say, 2 or 3 months. And then in theory, the Y should be arriving somewhere between the 3-month and 6-month zone to sort of fill in the demand gap, because there's a lot of interest in that vehicle because it has a lot more utility. So I wanted to throw out some numbers. Those numbers are shaping how the analysts are viewing Tesla and its potential stock price in the short term. So I wanted to get you guys sort of numbers bouncing around your head. You can whip out the calculator and see how those are playing out. The next thing I wanted to look at is that Colin Russ, the analyst who raised the price target to 612 and triggered the 46-point rise in Tesla stock price yesterday, was kind of an interesting character. As we said, you might want to go back to his on-screen discussion at CNBC on December 18th of 2019. He describes the process that they're using to come up with the value of Tesla. Prior to getting deep into other things that he said, the main comment he made was, I'm at 612, but there are a number of $700 targets for Tesla that are coming out. So I just wanted to note that, yeah, we kind of heard that number that he put out along with that influencing the price. So it was interesting to note that he chose to articulate the fact that he's at 612, but also articulate the fact that there are other analysts from other firms that he's talking to that are looking at $700 number targets for Tesla. So that was a pretty big shocker, and I think that's still shaping what's going on in the markets right now, because there are a lot of fund managers who are now green-lighted for that higher price in light of the fact that they can get backup support from folks in this regard. So I'm intrigued, I'm amazed, fascinated. We'll continue to update you guys on this. So where we are now is that the stock price is pre-market up $12, a very good amount given the nice run it's already had. So that holds. Stock is up like $70 or 46 plus 12. It's up $60 in a day and a half. And we're going to find out if there's follow through on that today, meaning that we could open up at $12 more would get us up into the 540 zone. And then once the market opens, we're going to find out if stock goes from 540 to 500 or stock goes from 540 to 600 in that period. There's kind of, as you know, a background discussion going on, which is when will the hedge funds capitulate who are short Tesla stock? And according to one of our viewers on our comments from our yesterday's show, he pointed out that there's an interesting phenomenon, which is the short interest has dropped from about 28% to about 26%. And so that isn't a huge drop in the amount of short interest that's going on. And one of the suggestions we made on that is that there's actually been a change in shorting policy. And that is that instead of the 50% that you have to come up with normally, it's down to 30% as of the new year. So this also might be influencing the capitulation time that the shorts have because they basically have more time to get it done. And I would say they're definitely hoping to either generate or find some bad news from Tesla that allows them to sort of recover from the beating that they're currently taking. So, so at any rate, where we're at right now is that it obviously Tesla's looking good. If you're a Tesla fan, you've made some good money here. Uh, Clearly, you can't sell if you're a long-term holder and you believe in the story. Hey, just hang on next year, see what happens because things are going well. The next thing that I wanted to dive into that influences this whole thing is something that's called cognitive dissonance. So the idea is you see something and it's so ridiculous you can't believe it. So it's easier to say it doesn't exist than to say it exists. So I one of the transitions that can occur is afterwards you move into a mode of, okay, you see the thing and you finally accept that it's there. So you kind of get over your cognitive dissonance. So I wanted to bring that up in the case of Tesla because one of the things I've been expecting for a long time is that, Daimler-Benz or VW, maybe not BMW, but definitely possibly GM. I hate to mention Bob Lutz, I'll just say it quietly, but the logic is that the people with the largest amount of money in any business tend to be able to walk over and use that cash to beat up smaller companies. And so one of the challenges for Tesla has been lurking in the background. At what point would a well-heeled competitor use that cash to come over and just beat the crap out of Tesla? And the answer is that hasn't happened. And so I believe that part of this movement in the stock price is a whole bunch of people saying, oh, we were expecting them to be getting hammered by good competitors by now, but the competitors are having technology challenges that don't let them do the normal small company beatdown. So that is, I think, an underlying theme of everything that's going on right now. Now, another part of this that I think is amazing is that you can also have the small company stepping into a space and inflicting a beatdown on some very large entities if you can use a technology advantage to do it. So one of the things that is being teased out in the data we're seeing is that Tesla had an initial round of announcement on their vehicle. That round resulted in a bunch of orders. We then saw a decline in the number of people who were buying EVs in China. And we think that was Tesla creating its own weather, where you now have people saying, oh, I was going to have to buy a domestic vehicle, but I've decided not to anymore. So the next thing that then happens is we're sort of moving into a next phase where it's like, okay, what's the reality here? And one of the realities that we wanted to bring up now that we kind of see developing is the fact that there's an interesting problem. And the problem is if you're a domestic manufacturer operating in the price range that Tesla's at, you have all these consumers that are sitting there saying, do I buy a Tesla or not? And then you have companies like Faraday who are going out of business trying to compete with Tesla because they didn't have the capital to build up the infrastructure to be competitive. So what we're looking at currently is the fact that there's this sort of weird deal where you enter the country, there are other entities that are in existence, your brand, quality, et cetera, is so great that your competitors can offer sort of subtle differences, but the differences aren't great enough to supersede all the competitive advantages that you have. So as a result, you end up with the very newest company entering, a la Tesla, at the price point of 42K, taking market share from everybody in the space, including ICE vehicles. And now you have the phenomenon of Tesla, in essence, caving or collapsing, companies trying to compete in that frame. So the Model Y is going to be out of business for 10 or 15 companies in China without a doubt, because they're really trying to secure that position, but they don't offer enough of a competitive advantage for consumers to not embrace Tesla as it enters the marketplace. We've been getting fed a whole bunch of data points from different areas, and there's a gentleman named Paul who is a viewer of ours, and he's based in China and has provided some great info, which we appreciate. One of the things that he pointed out was that because of the structure of Chinese families, the SUVs tend to be a better way to go, but we're nonetheless seeing a lot of threes sold. And so, I think that I've actually watched people sort of flexing what they'd like, which is the SUV, to make the three work. So I've also found this kind of interesting because if you look at the wheelbase of the Model 3, it's a longer wheelbase than clearly something like the Bolt or even the ID3. And that longer wheelbase starts to introduce ride qualities of more expensive vehicles. So the Model 3 is kind of in this midpoint between a small car and a big car, easy to handle, easy to park, etc. But that wide gap between tires gives you, in essence, a luxury ride. And I'm kind of bringing that up as another data point because for me, as a writer and an auto analyst, it's fun to watch who's buying Model 3s now, because there's something called the upgrade market. So people out of college buy a very cheap vehicle or a used one, and they upgrade into something in the 20s or 30s that's more reliable, et cetera. And then as they get into their 50s and 60s, they're now at the luxury purchase point. And it's always awesome for me to see owners of Teslas that are sort of above 50, et cetera, because they would normally be in a big Mercedes by now, or a BMW or a VW, or something in the Cadillac range, but they're in a Model 3. And particularly if it's a bigger guy like myself, I'm also impressed by the fact that folks are giving up, I want to call traditional luxury or traditional stair steps to step into a Tesla. And I think it's awesome. It's a reflection of the marginal utility of what the Model 3 offers, and the fact that it can offer value to sort of young millennials that are in Silicon Valley that have a lot of money to spend, all the way up to individuals that are, all the way up to folks that can afford really expensive cars. I just saw a comment come in from Bavaria, one of our viewers there, and they're really scared, it said, about what's going on with Tesla. They should be, because I think it's obviously going to make a big change, especially with the new factory opening there. But what I'm really pointing at right now is what consumers are supposed to be doing, which is hunting. If they have a lot of money, they're supposed to be hunting a very expensive, very big ICE vehicle with a big engine in it. And they're kind of not cooperating. And as people have good experiences with those cars that are in that category, other people in that category are migrating over to choosing electric. And then when they go to electric, they're going to Tesla primarily. So there's some really interesting, insane in the membrane elements to what Tesla is causing in the marketplace, which is the disruption is on a whole bunch of different levels. So we generally like to go really at a target and hit that target and sort of move on. I want to say this show has been muddling because we're above the price target we had for the company. The price targets are now being increased by credible analysts. And so, the question is, what's next? And the answer we're seeing is $600 a share. Smells like what's next, even though I can't say I could justify right now. I could justify after I see these earnings coming up. What I also want to suggest is that there's a battle. We're in what I call the analyst battle zone. So what that means is the company can't make any direct statements that would affect the stock price. So what actually happens now is that the analysts really dominate the space because they're not limited by rules that the company has about what it cannot say because of how it would affect the stock price. So we're now in this interesting position where either good or bad, in this case, good with Tesla stock price, whatever analysts say that are from credible firms can big time affect where the stock is going. And so why we think is happening right now is the $1 billion of cash coming out just from Europe to Tesla each year is sort of being baked in the models. And what does that mean in terms of people coming back and saying, okay, this is what they're earning at this point based on this additional cash on the balance sheet. And so the answer that's coming back is, in the numeric range we're at now in the 500s is fine, and there's justification to even go up into the 700s. And for me, again, I'm sort of in that insane zone where I'm like, okay, I might be able to say I could agree I can see 600, but I can't see any more than that. Now, can the stock go above that and hunt that 700? Absolutely. But if I were involved with it at all, I would definitely try to hedge my positions there because I think it could be lucrative, but it could be a bloodbath too. And it just has to drop 50 or 100 points for it to be painful for those who've gotten in because you hate losing that money. I do want to say congratulations. When we did our Should I Stay or Should I Go show 3 shows ago, there are a number of people who decided to stay and just ride it out, not bother with trying to sell out. And I have to say congratulations to you and not sort of taking your profits and running and sticking around. I do think that the key sort of decision points are, one, the earnings on February 18th, and then after we get those earnings, Model Y's arrival will really easily justify the $500 to $600 stock price. But with battery in China and a continuous move towards domestic production, lowering overall fixed costs on the fixed and variable costs for the production of the car, I just think that there's a lot of baked in how and where things could go very, very well for Tesla that is being picked up in the process that the analysts are doing currently. So we're going to probably have one more show today, particularly if there's a dramatic move in the stock. And we expect that there'll be also some changes in what the analysts are saying about the process. And so we look forward to hearing your comments afterwards. I wanted to say greetings to everyone. There's if you type in when are Tesla's earnings on, I have a Model 3 purchase that I'm going to do this year. So I do not have a Tesla currently, but I am planning to do so. And your help on Patreon or other methods will help in our process of getting one. Greetings, Pierre. The problem right now is we're at the point in the show where we answer questions, but all the questions have gone by, and I deliberately avoided trying to read them other than the quick, I saw a few folks saying hello from different parts of the world. Thank you. I've driven the Model 3 10, 15 times on different locations, especially at the factory. And yes, it's an awesome vehicle. And it's weird that I actually enjoy the Model 3 better than I do the Model S. Exactly. There was just a question about what will happen to shorts as they realize that the price isn't going to fall, and exactly a little blasting up of the price. And I think we're definitely in it to some extent, is what you'll see. And then it'll kind of settle back down afterwards because the shorts have been kind of wrung out as they have to close out their positions. So, that's kind of what we're expecting to see happen here. The one other thing I wanted to do is we have homework in our show that you've got to do as part of understanding what's going on, which is what our goal is. And that homework is I want you to type in Tesla and the Wall Street Journal in your Google bar, and then look backwards at the list of stories that are there. I just find it fascinating that there's this discussion of, oh, Tesla turned the corner on their last earnings, but it'll be the last corner they turn, is an example of the headline that Tesla produced, or Wall Street Journal produced on Tesla, there. And so all of the stories you'll see tend to be, oh yeah, Tesla might have done this, but they're about to have this major nightmare that's going to create unsuccess. And so you should be aware of that and mindful of that. And so I kind of wanted to just bring this up to you because it's amazing to watch individuals like the Wall Street Journal or Barron's or Fox all of a sudden turn to, can you believe how much the company is worth now, from we think they're going out of business and they're in deep trouble, et cetera, et cetera. The one other note, and this is going to be coming up, is that we're excited about is how the Cybertruck is going to get hit by this high stock price. And that is, we're really looking forward to the refi that Tesla's going to do of their debt that gives them more capital to set up, because they definitely need a factory to produce supposedly the 450,000 Cybertrucks. But they also need at least 2 more factories to produce the Semi. And the issue is they don't have the cash to do it currently, but with a refi of the debt, I think that, I just think that it gives Tesla huge amounts of room to sort of execute well that they currently don't have. So I'm really rooting for the stock price to stay up in the region that it's at now. Obviously going higher would be better, but really looking for the operational changes that Tesla needs to make, driven by having the capital to do so. So we definitely look forward to how that all plays out. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Please remember on our health tips, number 1, a 15-minute walk on the day will allow you to consume the calories for the day. And when you do your workout, that workout can reduce overall weight in a healthy fashion. I'm having a health depressive moment right now because the Wall Street Journal is having, the New York Times is having a 7-day sugar challenge. And there was a doctor from UC San Francisco on NPR yesterday that was talking about this health challenge. And what he was really talking about is that, the implications of heavy sugar consumption is huge for your health short and long term. And I find it interesting because I love sugar, cookies, ice cream, all this stuff. And I just found it interesting that it's nice to close your eyes and look away from healthy stuff you should be doing. But it's useful when you're reminded in this fashion that you end up changing habits that'll be health-wise going forward. So I wanted to encourage you to consider reading about and trying the 7-day sugar challenge from the New York Times that was created by a doctor from UC San Francisco. Also wanted to remind you, don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4, so the food can digest. Also, a 5-2 diet consideration might be a good idea to consider, but there's a whole bunch of fasting options out there. That was one that was mentioned to me by several doctors, and wanted to encourage you to consider that as well. Any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks for the 360 convertible discussion there. I knew about the 360 convertible comment, and I was thinking to myself, wow, if you look at how convertibles work, it can be anywhere from like 8 or 10% off the stock price, all the way up to 35% discount, meaning if you buy the convertible bonds, you could revert to the stock. And I was like, man, there are a lot of people that are going to do that and make huge money. And then I called a banker friend, and he's like, yeah, that's possible. But the reality is that when they do those structures, they allow the company the ability to buy that thing back and retire it before you're able to do exercising and making a ton of money in that fashion and diluting the stock in the process. So we'll see how this plays out as that refi is done. But it's a 360 conversion rate. We're at almost 600 now. So it's a great situation. Any rate, I want to thank all of you for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Licht, Rot, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, Здравствуйте, Russian, hello, Ni hao ma, Chinese, uh, Hejdo, Swedish, do Virginia. I thought that's Polish. I thought it was Serbian because one of our friends mentioned it. I have to look it up. Um, and in Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good man. Any rate, have a great day and thank you all for joining us. Look forward to your after show comments. Do.